Greetings, fanboys and fangirls. Jared here with another video review from Fanboys Forever, and today I'm excited to finally be able to share this review of the new deluxe, oversized Masterverse Horde Trooper. This is yet again one of those oversized releases on the Mattel Creations website. This was something I was really shocked by when they revealed this. This is a part of the new Eternia subline, and so far we actually hadn't seen any representation for the evil Horde in that new Eternia line. Well, very interestingly, they decided to start with the actual Horde Trooper, and it really took me aback to see them go with this oversized Horde Trooper. But it's one of those things that the more and more I thought about it, the more the idea just grew on me, that they would have these Horde Troopers that were just massive, hulking kind of machines, where the person was in there almost like a Hulkbuster armor that Iron Man just kind of plugs his body into, whereas the limbs and everything are mostly robotic. So as soon as they shown it, I really began to wrap my head around it, and I really liked the concept ever since. Of course, he is surrounded by the denizens of the evil Horde and the Fright Zone, and of course I wanted to have these guys around to be as numerous as I could to show you that yes, I really do love the design of the basic Horde Trooper. Of course, New Eternia has to be probably the most prestigious subline that they have in the Masterverse series, and as always, we're here to kind of decide whether this does a good job of holding up that tradition, or does it fall short of some of its lofty ideas. But before we begin, be sure that if you haven't yet, that you subscribe to the channel. And with the channel growing so rapidly, it's a great time to get in kind of on that ground floor. You can become a member of that fanboy family. At the end of the video, be sure to comment down below and let me know what you thought about this guy. And with all that out of the way, let's begin. So we'll talk just for a moment about the packaging. I always really enjoy what Mattel cooks up with this oversized Masterverse kind of packaging. We can actually see that we have this kind of big shoebox kind of thing with the artwork for the new style of Horde Trooper on the front. What's really cool is that it opens up and you can see that it's more of kind of a poster, and you can see this giant battle going on down below, and I really love this with the Eternian troops fighting these Horde Troopers. Of course, there's also this cool insert that comes over the Horde Trooper itself that you can use as a diorama if you fold it correctly. And on the other side, which is my favorite feature, you can actually get the cool looking kind of redux of the Filmation style of Fright Zone back there. So I really love seeing Hordak's Palace like this, and I especially like the pieces of Horde Troopers that are kind of scattered around. So many great details here. Absolutely love this. On the inside of the box, we have a new Eternia logo with the Horde bat. On the inside of the box, we have a little bio about this brand new Horde Trooper. Nothing too surprising there, but I really do like the explanation for some of the surprises that we find inside. On the back, we have this kind of haunting artwork right here of the giant new Horde Trooper. And although I'm not sure they intended it, if you unfold the box, you can get a really lovely diorama kind of stand for your figure. And if you notice, these flaps down here even make like a neat rock floor, and you can actually put him right here, so it makes kind of a really picturesque background. So I actually think that's cool. And keep in mind, this is one of those Masterverse figures that has some of the accessories in a little box, in this case the backpack. And with that brief look at the packaging out of the way, let's look at the actual figure that you get. So we'll start just by looking at the overall sculpting and the design of this guy. He is mostly what we would consider just to be the classic kind of looking Horde Trooper. It really isn't that far removed from what we're used to. It kind of has the basic motif, and I'll go ahead and grab one of the old Origins ones so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. And there's not many areas you can point to as being something drastically different. I think it's obvious that the chest armor up here is a lot more football player-esque and big and bulked up at the shoulders, of course. The logos are pretty much exactly the same, along with the belt buckles right there. I think the biggest departure is probably what they did with the helmet, at least for the visor of the helmet. Here it's more of just a V. It's a little more generic, like you would see like a sci-fi robot from the 60s or the 50s. Over here, I think that they're sort of going with more of a bat motif, like a bat wings perhaps. So I think that they're trying to do something to make it a little more original. I think your mileage will vary on this. I like the old design of just, the basic kind of robot. I think this is cool too. It definitely has its own charm. It's just that, I'm not exactly used to it. From the back, this is one of the cooler differences, and that's that he has this cool backpack thing. And it's the thing that I talked about that was kind of an optional piece that you could just plug in on the back. If you don't want it, you totally don't have to use it, but you have these big kind of empty gaping holes. So this guy constitutes a completely new mold. He's a lot like some of these other big deluxe figures we've been getting through the Mattel Creations service, to where you can tell that there just isn't any reuse whatsoever. They're just kind of a new piece. And that makes this guy extra exciting. One cool bonus that I found is you can actually remove the Horde symbol. So this tells me that eventually they may use this piece up here for something else and eventually plug in another logo. I'm not exactly sure what that'll be, if it'll be like a Snake Man logo and you'll have the Snake Man version of the Horde Trooper, but who knows? We'll see what they do with it, if anything. I also think the boots and the feet are a pretty neat design as well. And I think they've gone a ways in kind of modernizing and toughening up this classic design. There isn't any light piping that goes through the helmet to light up that visor, so that's kind of a shame. But if you point it towards the light, you can definitely see that yellow light coming through, and you can almost make out what's inside, and we'll get into that. Since this is a brand new body, we definitely should show off the articulation. If you have the helmet on, it goes side to side, and that's it. And you'll see why later, because it's removable. With the arms, you can bring them out about this far, and you can get a great T-pose. Bring them back in, they get pretty close to the body, but these pieces on the belt kind of keeps them from going any further. You can see that you have a rotation at the upper bicep. You do have a single jointed elbow right here, but it's a fairly effective single joint for how bulky this guy is, almost getting to 90 degrees. We do have a rotation at the wrist, and we do have a rotation at the gauntlet, so that's a nice surprise. We do have a hinge at the hand, and the hand rotates. There's a really nice kind of roll around joint up here at the upper diaphragm, so I think that's pretty nice. You can see the swords kind of getting in the way back there, which is totally removable. We do have a waist joint. We do have drop down hips, and boy, do they ever drop down. We have kind of a massive gap big enough to fit my thumb into right here, but that's fine because he is so robotic. And then you can bring that out to get a great split, way more than you would ever need. And that means you can bring it way up, of course, to get a kick, which is fantastic. For something like this, Marvel Legends eat your heart out, because when you do these giant mecha kind of things, usually you're not going to get a kick like that, so it works out really well. You can see that we do have a rotation at the upper thigh. We actually do get a double joint bend at the knee. It works exceedingly well, so that does exactly what you would hope it would. The boot at the bottom does have a rotation, but it tends to be a little stuck and not do much, so you can only wiggle it just a little. You do get a hinge here at the ankle. We do have some ankle rocker pivot, but it is kind of limited by these big cuffs down here. However, when putting him in a really wide pose, probably as wide as you would ever have kind of a robotic, super armored character like this ever in, he's really able to flat-foot it pretty easily. He does struggle a little bit more than some of the other figures in the line, but still, it didn't require much effort to get him to do that and balance it just fine, so I don't think you'll really have any trouble. So you can see he's got exceedingly good articulation for what he is, a giant robot. Right over here, we do have some accessories, and here we have his kind of Horde bat staff kind of thing. And I like this modern update for the classic idea of what this accessory is. You can see the Horde dragon right here, and you can see these wings, and I love this because you can actually pose out the wings. So that is a really cool feature that they have. These do come off a little easier than I would want them to, but it still holds on pretty well. It's not going to be flying off or anything while you just have them posed. I like all the techie details, and I think it looks really, really cool. Like I said, we also have a sword back here, and you can actually unclip it from there. Now, it's worth pointing out that you can actually take the Horde Dragon staff, and you can do the same thing with it. You can clip it in on the back, and so you can kind of do it either way. And these hands are sculpted really well to where you kind of jam the hilt of any of these things into this area, and it holds it really securely. You can see we have the extremely vain Hordak right there with his face, and the giant blade itself. I didn't really know how I would like the visual of a Horde trooper with a giant kind of buster sword, but you know what? I really do love it. I think it ends up looking super cool, and it's the kind of visual I wouldn't have anticipated that I would have liked, but I think that it works so very well. And I especially like the red Horde bat right there. I think it's just an awesome look. I also really like the idea of the Horde dragon back here, kind of giving him a little extra ornamentation, kind of like something he's carrying into war as like a calling card of the Horde. So I think that's really cool too. So one of the interesting aspects about this guy, which is true to that original figure, is that he can kind of be dismantled more than you would think he would be able to be. On the original figure, there was of course that action feature, which kind of popped him open as a robot and kind of sent stuff flying everywhere. But these guys hold a far more horrifying secret. As it describes on the bio, it says that these guys are actually people who have been, retrained and hypnotized into being Horde troopers. So if you take this off, you can see that, yes, they've gotten poor old Nosferatu here. That's pretty much the way I can describe this guy. He definitely has the look of the classic movie monster. I kind of look at this guy and think that he looks like he's perhaps the same species as Hordak because of the ears and everything and the shape of the face. So I don't really know what that says about Hordak's species or what they are exactly, but it's certainly very interesting looking. I'm not exactly sure what they're doing on the eyes. I'm not sure if he's supposed to have like white pupils or something, but it's kind of confusing to me if it's printing or what it is, but it's a little strange. However, the paint is nice and straight on the teeth right there, but definitely a very Nosferatu kind of vampire look. We can also actually take this entire chest armor assembly off. I'm going to go ahead and remove the Horde bat, and I'm also going to remove the backpack right here, which is a slightly more gold tone almost than the rest of the chest armor. And you can see that it's plugged into the top in these two holes. And there's the two kind of plungers that do it. So once that's off, this is what it looks like inside. There's definitely a horror element to this guy. It almost looks like some kind of weird, like a robotic life support system that they plug this poor fool into. It's really disturbing when you look and see that you can see like his neck and collarbone and stuff in there as if he's like plunged into it. So he's in there somewhere piloting this thing, but he's just buried in all of this weird arcane circuitry, and it's all transparent, has all this extra detail to it. It's kind of a shame that I think a lot of people will probably never see this, and popping his head off kind of allows us to see a little bit better in there. It's also not something that they really advertise that much on the box for you to be able to do, nor do they really explain it. And, of course, I think with the market that these are aimed at, I think most adult collectors will realize that you can do this. But at the same time, maybe they should be a little more explicit about you doing this, because I think it gives a cool opportunity. Also, in the spirit of the original Horde Trooper, you can dismantle his arms a lot more easily than you can most figures. You can see that he can actually take his hand and his elbow and his shoulder completely apart, so you can have him be in a bunch of different pieces. It is kind of disturbing that this part is the same color as the head up here, almost to suggest that his actual arm is plugged in. They didn't have to make this the same color, and I don't think there was any reason to make it the same color. It's almost just like a horrifying little extra detail to let you know that yes, a real living person is in there. So without removing his head, you can see that you can dismantle the figure this much with all these extra pieces lying around. So I think that's neat that you're able to do that. It definitely harkens back to that original figure. So I definitely think that something a lot of people will be curious about with this guy is, can he do the thing that we see He-Man do in that classic Masters of the Universe movie, Secret of the Sword, where he dresses up as a Horde trooper to kind of sneak in? And yes, indeed you can. Here we have the head of New Eternia He-Man. This is from the Flying Fists version, and you can see that it's a good fit. Of course, don't look too closely because you can still see the green-blue neck in there, but honestly, you can't even really see it at all like this. And it completes that illusion totally. So definitely a really cool option, and I think it does a good job with how low the head sets in there of selling the idea that He-Man could be in there piloting it, and that proportionally it would work when you think about the placement of the body and everything, and having enough room for his arms and his legs to kind of go down into the recesses of the machine. So I think this is a really cool option. The helmet does fit on just fine. So if you even look closely, you can kind of see where it lines up with He-Man's face. You can see his eye right there and his nose. So yeah, it's almost like it was designed for this. I think they knew that people would want to replicate the moment from Secret of the Sword. We'll definitely do a few comparisons with this guy, just so you can kind of get an idea of scale. He's probably even larger than you would imagine he is, even a very big figure, like say for instance Snout Spout right here. Pales in comparison in terms of size. So it definitely shows you how big that this guy is. Of course, taking a basic New Eternia figure, using that new He-Man buck, which seems to be the direction they're going with for most of the heroes, you can take a newer figure like Fisto from New Eternia and see the difference between that regular male body along with this guy. And yeah, he's definitely a bruiser, coming out to be very big. And of course, I think appropriately we should look at the She-Ra figure from Masterverse. This isn't New Eternia, but is instead directly inspired by the Princess of Power. I've kind of almost looked at these as the Filmation segment of the Masterverse line. He's huge compared to She-Ra, and Beastman still pales in comparison size-wise. Here's the Filmation-styled Hordak from the exclusive deluxe line that they did. Hordak is quite a bit smaller. Speaking of Hordak, we will show you the Hordak from the Masters of the Universe Revolution cartoon in Masterverse. And I really like the scale, and I also like the style of these two guys together. I know we don't have a New Eternia Hordak yet, but this is probably about as close as we can get for now. I love the style of this guy. And finally, we have the latest He-Man in the line, and that is the Flying Fist New Eternia He-Man. I've customized mine a little bit and added some wash and things to give the black grooves in the armor a little bit more definition, and also around the H and shoulder pads. And of course, I had to get out my old classic Horde Trooper from Masters of the Universe Classics. I always thought this guy was really beefy, but putting them side by side, it's kind of funny now. Of course, that doesn't invalidate this guy or anything. He's still an awesome figure, and I wish I had a ton of these guys instead of just the two that came in that pack. The battle damage one, thanks to Brandon, he gave that one to me. But you can see that these two guys look really cool together. It's also interesting that on the artwork for this guy, it does show a lot of basic Horde Troopers with him. So I would say that it's still a possibility that we could just get basic 7-inch scaled Horde Troopers that are pretty similar to this guy, and that this guy is just meant to be some of the bruiser kind of shock troops. But who knows? Maybe this is supposed to be the new one. I don't know. So you may be wondering, why on earth did it take me so long to get this review out? Usually I'm pretty on top of things when it comes to an exclusive release like this one. Well, the truth is, the first one that I got had a major QC problem. Somehow or another, there was a part of the hip joint that was completely frozen, and working with it, finally I thought I'd freed it, but what I'd actually done was break an internal part on the inside of the hip, which caused it to then be extremely floppy and really couldn't hold its weight. So I had to contact Mattel. They had to send me a mailing label. I had to send it back. Then they had to send me a new one. This was a long process, took a couple of weeks, and it was really aggravating. So unfortunately, it was not a fun experience. I can't say it was horrible or anything, because they definitely sent me a new one. And this guy had no kind of joint problems. So I'm going to be charitable here and just say that that was a one-off problem, and that was just something strange. But let me know down in the comments below if you had any quality control issues with this guy. So yeah, in the end, this guy is a wonderful, wonderful addition to that New Eternia line, and I think he does a fine job representing it and holding up that standard of quality. But you know, of course, he is at a deluxe price point, so you are paying for that extra size. You know, I've definitely overdone it with the amount of Horde Troopers that I bought in the Origins scale and style. So for me, I was ready for something a little different and a little more original. But I do know that there's probably plenty of people that would have rather this guy had been completely traditional and at a regular size. And that also leads me to the idea that I really don't want to army build this guy a whole lot, because he's really, really big. he seems more like an item that you would only want one of, maximum two of, because he is so huge. He's going to take up a lot of real estate on the shelf, so I don't see myself buying a bunch of multiples of these guys like I did with the Horde troopers in the Origin scale. Like I said, I do think there's a chance that we'll eventually, just in the regular retail line, see a standard Horde trooper, whether that is in the Princess of Power subline or whether that's in the new Eternia subline, who knows. But I do think there is a decent chance, so we'll see. This guy was right around the $33 mark at Mattel Creations. After taxes and everything, he pretty much came out to be a $40 figure. And I think that for the size of figure you're getting here, I think that is a pretty reasonable deal. He does stand at nearly 10 inches tall, and he is extremely bulky, very heavy, and comes with a decent array of accessories. I'm not sure there's anything else that he needed to come with, but I would like to see them redo this guy sometime in different colors so that we can get the black and red versions like we did in Origins. I think that would be really fun to see. Not to mention a snake Horde trooper, which I think would also be cool. Give me your ideas for how they can use this fairly unique mold down below, along with your thoughts and opinions on this figure, whether you hate him or you love him. And don't forget to be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video if you've enjoyed today's content, and leave that comment down below. And with all that out of the way, God bless you and yours. And I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Fanboy out. This guy can be dressed down quite a bit more than